Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. With host and founder, Richard Case, and co-host and retreat leader, Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today, we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Good morning, everybody. This is End Times Friday. This is part 2 with our good friends Eric and Rabbi from Jerusalem and Israel. We last time welcome you guys, and last time we were talking primarily about the situation with Gaza hostages. Let me see if I can summarize it, and then you can kind of verify, and then we can talk about it. But originally there were about 250 hostages. 90 of them have been killed, 160 alive, 130 or so have been released, and now there's 24 left to be released, what they call phase 2. Your position, which I tend to think is accurate, is Hamas will try to drag that out and won't release all of them because that's their whole ace in the hole, so to speak. And it's unlikely that they'll release them all at once, which they'll keep holding it, which will therefore mean on and on and on. Given that that's probably the way it's going to go, will there become any point in the next month or 2 or 3 or 6 or 12 where Israel will just say that we've gone as far as we can and we can't go any further and we do something different? Or will this just be a constant drag on the country?
Sarah, I'm not sure anyone really knows. There's also a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, there's some reticence within the IDF about renewing the conflict, not because that they're afraid. If the war is resumed, it's going to look more like a guerrilla warfare rather than sort of, because the number of fighters that are trained by Hezbollah has dwindled. Hamas is not very large anymore, and so they're going to do what they can to fight with the civilian population, kill a soldier, and go back in. And the Israeli population is not going to be very happy if they start seeing a lot of their soldiers being killed without seeing a lot of military gains in the process. Despite all the bellicose talk from the government, I don't know exactly how the army is preparing to. If you don't mind, I want to pick up on something you were talking before about the end of the session, Richard. That is evil. And I'm going to do a role reversal here with Ephraim. I'm going to be the rabbi for a few minutes here, okay? I often read the writings of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, left our world about 2 years ago, but was the chief rabbi of the UK. And what made him such an incredible personality was he not only was well versed in the Talmud and Torah and the teaching of all the Jewish heritage, but he was well read of all the major philosophers, John Locke, everybody, and he could put everything biblical in the current context. He wrote about passage that I remember all the time about. So last week's passage in the Bible that we all read was about Jethro, which is the scene after the Hebrews have crossed the Red Sea. They're now on their way to Mount Sinai to receive the commandments from God. And there's a chapter involving Jethro. But the one before it is the Hebrews had just crossed through the Red Sea, and Pharaoh was on their tail to try to reclaim them back. And the Red Sea collapses, and most of Pharaoh and his forces are killed. And then the Hebrews are now, within a matter of days, attacked by an entity called Amalek. And Amalek is a real entity that existed at the time, and it's used as a term within Jewish tradition to refer to evil enemies. And so in this passage, God commands the Hebrews that thou shalt forgive the Egyptians for what they did to you and enslaving you, but one shall never forgive Amalek for attacking you, because here was an entity that attacked a population that was totally defenseless, just reemerged from slavery, and they're attacked for really no reason. They weren't planning on settling in this land; they were transiting through it, and just because he could, this entity Amalek attacked the Hebrews. According to the scriptures, Moses held his arms up high, and as long as his arms were up Joshua was able to fight off the Amalek and was victorious. Rabbi Sachs comments, okay, so why are the Hebrews commanded to forgive Pharaoh, but not Amalek? They're both, were terrible to the Hebrews. And it's explained by the sages over time that this is to remind the Jews that there's such a thing as absolute evil. And this is a concept that's gotten lost in Western society. Now everyone says, oh, just give them their land. They're deprived of their honor, of their land. Just give them their land and they'll be okay. They're just like me and you. And you don't know how many times I have discussions ranging sometimes to arguments with friends of mine. When I go back to visit friends and family in the United States, and I say, no, you don't understand. There is such a thing as evil. It does exist in the world. And for you to say, oh, everyone's just like me living here, in the Rocky Mountains on a nice little estate, having a good time. No, people don't think like you around the world. There are people who think totally differently from you and who get a kick out of murdering and torturing people. And it sounds terrible, but it's true. Okay, I said my piece.
Rabbi, I'm sure you have something you can add to that. So.
I could totally have that. Yeah, and I was going to comment on your thing. It's not just that nations that some people have no sense of evil or no bounds of evil. They think that the evil is good. It's the same as Nazis didn't, overlook their evilness. They thought that, destroying the Jewish people and killing every 6-month-old baby and destroying a whole nation was good. Yeah. There was nothing better they could do for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the world. Fundamentalist Muslims have the exact same philosophy. We have to create a revolution in the world and bring Islam back. And somehow we have to destroy the Western world. And the front runners of freedom and morality and goodness have always been the Jewish people. I don't know if you've heard the expression, the canary in the coal mine. The Jewish people are the canary in the coal mine. We're the first nation. Whenever a nation in the world becomes evil and wants to create a new world order, the Jews are always the first target. But we're not the last target. Like the canary dies in the coal mines first from the noxious gases, but later, it gives a sign for the miners to get out quickly. So the Jews are the front runner because we somehow represent God and goodness and morality and the Bible. And so we get targeted. But the Muslim fundamentalists believe that this type of killing and destruction and what we define as evil, they think it's beautiful, it's fantastic. They're educating their children to, there's nothing better than you can do. It's like kill as many Jews as you possibly can. I don't care if they're 6 months old or 83 years old. By the way, just there a lot of attention has gone to the mother and the 2 children who were murdered in the Hamas captivity that were released today. Their bodies were released today. But the other person was an 80-year-old man who lived on a kibbutz beside Gaza. He spent his life picking up Gazan children and Gazan civilians who needed operations that Israeli hospitals would open up their doors, and he would pick them up, drive them to the Israeli hospitals. Israeli organizations would provide them medical care, usually for free, shuttle them back. So he was a volunteer for years, for decades, bringing these people in, thinking that if we just love each other and we just show that, we love each other and we're all the same and we care about each other. And that's what these kibbutzim really stood for. And they thought that could really change things. And now they are teaching, I've heard this from many of them themselves. They say, we used to teach our kids that we're all the same. We all in the world want the same things. We want freedom. We want happiness. We want goodness, etc. And now they say, we don't teach our kids that anymore. We teach our kids that there is really evil in the world, and we have to recognize it and be strong to fight against it. And unfortunately, that's being shoved down our throats, that awareness. And it's a rude awakening. But much of the world is completely oblivious to this threat and just how evil
it's it. So if I could pick up from that, I think, Vice President J.D. Vance in his speech in Europe just this week, it's gotten a lot of criticism within Europe, but that's the issue he's addressing. He basically stood up in front of the Europeans in Munich at their security conference telling them, unless you start taking care of your borders and the immigration that's coming into your country, incidents like this car ramming attack, or I think it was in Sweden or something, where an Afghan refugee was stabbing somebody, this stuff's not going to stop. And you have to recognize that there's a problem and deal with it. I think that's one of the main messages I think he was trying to deliver.
You bring up that story. We actually teach in our ministry that story. And there's also a statement that God makes, and he says, you're always going to have what we call Amalekites or Amalekites. You're always going to have them. And we understood what you just said. It's evil. You're always going to have evil, and we do have to understand it because the values, aren't the same. I actually had lunch with Netanyahu. This is back in '98, before 9/11 happened with us, and he was describing to us this very point. He said, "Your perspective is you think everybody has the same value you have." He said they don't. He said, "Imagine you're in a battle with an enemy that actually doesn't value the same things you do and doesn't value life. So you never come to a point where you both agree, you know what, it'd be better not to fight and let's all go back to where we are going to live good lives." They said the enemy surrounding Israel, they're evil and they're not going to stop being evil. And their value is they don't care to have any cessation of anything. They just want to pursue their vision. So we know that that's what you're faced with. And you're describing it, in pretty good detail. One comment that we heard here that Trump has made public is that he is going to, go in and occupy and run Gaza. How does Israel respond to that kind of a statement, knowing what we know about it? Because I tell people, boy, you got to be careful here what you think that means. Help us understand at least your perspective on that statement.
For me to be able to understand what goes through President Trump's mind. But I think I would typify how Israelis look at this. While there is this very, very small part of the population says, "Oh, this is a great idea. Let's implement it today." I think they're not a very large part of the population. I think the bulk of the population looks at this and says, at least finally someone is proposing something other than the same old thing. Just give them 2 states. They already had 1 state, called Gaza. And now we, I was actually an advocate in 2005 when Israel evacuated. I thought it was the right thing for Israel to do. Like I said, we can then understand what they're going to do when they get exactly what they claim they want. Give us a state we can call our own, have it free of Jews, we'll run it, and we'll do, and now we know what they're going to do. And I, for one, am not going to try any more experiments, and I don't think anyone in Israel is up for any more experiments either, because we now understand 100% what it is they want and what it is they're going to do once they get their so-called state. So when Saudi Arabia comes and says, we're going to do this, this, and this, all you have to do is promise the state. I don't know who in Israel is going to say, where do I sign? I don't know who's going to do that. So when President Trump talks about we're going to take this, he's right. Gaza is a beautiful beaches that were there when the Jews had it, because they had a couple of resorts there. People go there for vacations. The beaches were gorgeous. He's right. It's a beautiful piece of real estate that's been turned into an apocalyptic image, post-apocalypse, by the society that's there. So I'm not sure anyone here really believes or thinks that President Trump is actually going to go and develop this into a Mar-a-Lago type of place. I think what people here recognize, appreciate, and really thank President Trump for is at least someone's thinking out of the box. Someone's coming up with some idea other than the same old nonsense that's been proven more than once not to work. And so it's now apparent that Egypt is putting together a plan, because there's no way that Egypt wants to permit allowing the Gazans to come in. I would say a large part of the Israeli population says getting the Gazan citizens out of Gaza, if it's just temporary, it's temporary, whatever. I think most people here would say, look, let's get them someplace else. Then whoever is going to can rebuild Gaza, we can make sure they're not building tunnels and blah, blah. And then those who want to go back should be allowed to go back if they're being screened, for, not being Hamas leaders. I think if you were to ask, poll Israelis, they would say this is probably the right solution. I don't think there are many Israelis who think that you should forcibly evict everybody. There is a portion of the population that believes that. I don't think it's the majority. And I just think that people here are just appreciative that someone else is coming up with some other solution other than the same old nonsense we've heard over and over again that has now been proven to every Israeli with their eyes wide open that the Palestinian state doesn't solve anything. It's the demise of our state. With that, I'll let
Rabbi, do you have any input on that and any other thought about what might happen?
I can add to that I agree that the fact that Trump was willing to express the futility of what everybody else has been, Biden and his administration and the State Department and the European Union and the UN, they're all suggesting this: give them a Palestinian state, give them independence, etc., as if that will solve something. So the fact that there is recognition from a world leader that that is useless, pathetic, ridiculous, we've been there, we've done that, it's not going to work, is very, I don't know, we appreciate it in a very, very deep way. Yeah, whether that can happen, we would, first of all, we would love it. We would love to have the United States next door, take over Gaza. Everything would be beautiful. So we like that, even just to fantasize about how beautiful it would be to have the United States next door in Gaza is a nice thought. But first, we'd have to clear out Hamas and how that gets done. Obviously, the United States is not going to come in and do that. And we would have to do that first. And how we do that is a big question mark. But if someone can figure out how it can be done, we'll be happy to have the United States and partners move in. And I just want to bring up the point also that I think another thing which was equally revolutionary and super important to be said that Eric just touched on is let the Gazans leave. Leaving aside, force the Gazans leave that aside, but let them leave if they want to. When there was a civil war in Syria, millions of refugees were welcomed all over the world. Nations all over the world welcomed in these poor refugees that were running away from their war-ravaged country. Gaza starts a war. There's all these supposedly, innocent civilians in the war zone. And the liberal world, the European Union, the Union, all the same actors that were so desperate to take everyone in, unifying, they all say once, we can't let them leave. It is immoral for us to let the Gazans leave. They have to stay there. What evil. I mean, it's just unbelievably hypocritical and really evil. Don't we say that people should have a right to leave wherever? I should be able to leave Israel. You should leave the United States. Canadians can leave Canada. We have to force all the Gazans to stay under the rule of a terrorist organization determined to destroy their lives and their livelihood and their families and start war with neighboring countries. So the fact that Trump was able to get those words out of his mouth and say they should be encouraged, allowed to leave is amazing, especially knowing that the whole world will have such a negative reaction to it. Let's see where it goes. I really wish them luck that they can somehow use Trump negotiating techniques to maybe get some places in the world to start taking these poor Gazans in.
But to take off on that, because he's right, but Ryan is 100% right in that basically President Trump has shown the emperor has no clothes. All these countries around the world, Arab countries, European countries that say, no, Gazans must stay. They're just showing that all those countries that say that, all they want to do is propagate the problem. They don't want to solve anything.
It will be interesting to follow this, and next time we get together, that'll be what we'll do an update on. We'll see where they're thinking of going and who's going to play Egypt, Saudi Arabia, any investments going to happen. How would that play out? I see it being very problematic because you got to have a people that actually would like to live that way. And I don't see that, in Gaza. So that'll be an interesting thing as we unfold it. And thank you for that insight that at least it's opening up ideas. Bring us, before we end today, give us a update on Hezbollah. What's going on up there in the north?
So as of now, the Israeli Defense Forces have evacuated, quote unquote, Lebanon. They have retained 5 positions in strategic hills right within less than a few hundred meters of the border, from which they are able to surveil and see things and observe things of what's going on. And in the meantime, slowly but surely, the Lebanese army seems to be moving into positions. We're seeing situations of groups of people in civilian clothes waving Hezbollah flags. There was an incident where there was somebody had a rifle and there was, an IDF shot at them, didn't kill anyone in this case, but they chased them away because it looked like they're probably just trying to show off. But in the meantime, the IDF is keeping, open hand is the right word, but the open option that they're exercising of taking out individuals, taking out certain specific sites, not certainly in the heart of Beirut and not certainly in the heart of populated centers, but they're still sending aircraft to go blow up storage facilities and transit facilities along the Syrian border. It's still trying to smuggle arms in. There was an assassination of a senior Hezbollah official from a drone, Israeli drone, I think, earlier in the week. And so those operations are going on. They're probably not getting a lot of publicity abroad. But I would envision that this is going to be the status quo for a long time to come. And outside of Hezbollah and Iran, so far, the Lebanese government's they would like to see Israeli forces totally out because it's an issue. But everyone seems to be tolerating, the status quo. My guess is that the Israeli government and defense forces intend to let the status quo persist for a long time to come. Similar story in Syria. Positions that Israel took on the Syrian side of the border in the Golan Heights. It's a very narrow area. It's probably, I think it's less than a kilometer or two, which is less than a mile, maybe a little bit more, region where they're actually building long-term facilities, which are intended to be around for a long time, facilities to support the staff that's going to be there because Israel expects to be there for a long time.
Are the people who were displaced on the north, have they all returned, or are they returning back to their homes up in the north?
No, and there's a lot of reticence by that population. It'll change, I think, once the subsidies from the government stop at some point in the near future. They've been getting subsidies to help them tide themselves over without a home and a means for making a living. And those subsidies are probably coming to an end. I don't think they've come to an end yet, but they will probably be in the future. It's already been announced. The government intends to open up the school systems for regular classes at the end of March. And so government's trying to show that you have a skeptical population that's worried about going back and being attacked by Hezbollah. But the reality is the situation now is orders of magnitude better than it was on October 6th on that border. So they should, I think they should start going back. It's not my decision.
Rabbi, any closing comments at all on that?
No, just that it's difficult for them because they have the fear of terrorism and missiles, which, although things are better, there's a threat, and it's not exactly stable or that secure, the ceasefire, and things can change here radically very quickly. But also a lot of businesses and a lot of people's homes have been completely destroyed, and the economy is in ruins, and tourism doesn't exist, which was significant up in the north. So they have a lot of issues to return to.
Well, we'll follow that. Thank you again both for sharing and giving. Particularly, I really appreciate your discussion of evil, and I think our listeners can we can understand it. We don't experience it at the level you do, but it's true. And we understand that, so we're going to be praying for that in terms of at least peace within that evil, and that's how we see the world anyway. You're not going to be removed from it. It's just that you can live within it because God can provide things for you. So we'll pray for that, and we'll look forward to catching up. And Denny, maybe next time we actually jump into Iran specifically, and because we have lots of questions about that, and we'll watch what happens in Gaza, etc. So thank you for giving us this heads up and the truth about what's going on and the feel and the sense of it, and that helps us join you in that. So thank you so much. And Kathy, we will look forward to having them next time.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us, guys. You have no idea what a blessing you are to all of our listeners and to us, and truly just giving that personal face to what's going on in the news and hearing authentically what you're thinking and feeling. And I know lots of prayer warriors that listen to this podcast, and just hearing your thoughts and your emotions even on what's happening as we speak gives them real insight into how to pray. So thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for investing this time in us. And to our listeners, if you have questions, send them to us at questions@abideministries.com. We'd love to talk about it, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.